Cairo, Seattle.
It's time to get schooled with the professor, John Clayton.
Welcome to Schooled with the Professor. It's John Clayton here as we try to take the subject of offensive line building. And who better to talk about it than Walter Jones, and we'll visit with him in a little bit. I wanted to kind of go through the kind of transitions that things have gone through in the offensive line because, I was fortunate enough to start studying the league and being a reporter back in the 70s when things were so simple. I mean, it was pretty much you didn't have situation substitution. You basically put 5 offensive linemen in there. And it was a different type of game because, a lot of the offensive linemen were almost built like tight ends. I mean, they were light. I mean, I remember you look at the Steeler offensive line, I think the biggest guy that they had was about 275 pounds. I think Mike Webster came into the league like 245, 250, and they kind of built like a 270-pound offensive line where now you have lines that average into 320s and 330s and, big players. They didn't have many big players like that back in the 70s and through the 80s, and kind of the lifting and all that stuff in the offseason caused things to grow and, be a little different. But it was a simpler game back in the 70s. Then Bill Walsh came in and started to get more of the passing involved because he had the West Coast offense, and that had a different type of blocking scheme, and got the zone blocking that eventually came in. Then you had the times when you have Walter Jones and Jonathan Ogden came into the league, and they changed the game. And where they changed the game was basically the left tackle was the guy that was on the island, and he would take the best defensive lineman, usually it was the right defensive end, and just take him alone. He didn't have to have help, and they would take him out, and that allowed tight ends to get more involved in the passing offense and all that. Now it's a different game as trying to build the offensive line, and to my way of thinking, it's the toughest it's ever been, and that's why you see this transition that's tough right now for the Seahawks, this transition that's tough for other teams that are trying to build young offensive linemen. The big problem is college game is not adaptable in many ways to the NFL, where it was for the 70s, the 80s, and a good part of the 2000s, because now coaches have found a way to speed up the process in college to take guys and develop them and get them on the field earlier with the spread offense and the air raid offense. Because really, the coaching is on the field, and it's done to the point where the quarterback doesn't have to worry about calling plays, and the offensive linemen don't have to worry about putting their hand on the ground. I mean, it's just a matter of just kind of being together as 5 guys, just trying to block and buy enough time for the quarterback to be able to release a quick pass, and that's about it. It's a passing type of game. And so because of that, now you're going to have the failures in drafting that you never really had as much. Sure, there's been mistakes made in the 70s and 80s and 90s about drafting offensive linemen, but if you took a left tackle and you took him in the top 10, you're almost guaranteed you're going to have that guy for 10 years. Now you just don't know because, you have a year where, you don't have guys that come out of pro set offenses. And so you're kind of taking a whiff, and you look at 2013. That was a classic example. Here's Luke Jokel, here's Eric Fisher, and, they didn't establish themselves as stars. In fact, Luke Jokel got to the point where he eventually lost his left tackle job, and they didn't put the 5th-year option on him. And so he's going to hit the market next year, and we'll see how he does. Now he's coming off a major injury. But that's a major change in the standpoint that, you used to be able to count on drafting, using a first-round pick on offensive linemen, and now you just simply don't know. And so the other part of it is you're not able to hardly keep the guys because the contracts are 4 years. And then if you're successful in getting one in the 2nd round or 3rd round, now they're thinking, okay, I'm going to get the big money in free agency. And so they're going to be reluctant to try to lock things up. That's why, in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, particularly the Seahawks, that line was together for more than 50 games. And because of that, they had the continuity. And now you just rarely find lines that can stay together for 3 years or 2 years. I mean, now it's always a constant change, and that change disrupts the quality of line, the blocking, and then you have just bad holes that you're not able to fix. So what you need to do is you need to first have good coaching. That's where Seattle's in great shape because they've got Tom Cable, who's able to somehow sort out these young players and get that to work. Now, if he gets it to work this year, then this line can be good for a lot of times. It's not like, you look at the Dallas Cowboys. One of the reasons that they were successful is that they invested so many quality first-round picks and put them all together, and now they've got to try to see if they're going to be able to keep them all. They've got 2 of, Tyson Smith, of course, is a very good left tackle, one of the better ones to come into the league in the last couple of years. Fredrickson, the center, has been great, and now he's got a contract extension. And Zach Martin, the guard, we'll see if they can try to keep him. But, that's hard to do because if you invest so much as far as draft choices all in the offensive line, you don't help the defense out. You may be looking for a quarterback and you don't get the quarterback. And so it's rare that you're able to find something like that. But they've done a good job of building. But I know each year when I go to training camp, I always go and look at the team's depth, right? And I want to see, first off, do you have 5 quality starters on the offensive line? And in a lot of ways, you get to teams and they don't. I mean, they have major holes there. And if you don't have the starters, you don't have the good backups. And so you get an injury or two, and it's even more a disaster. Look what's going on this year with the Minnesota Vikings. They thought they had done a pretty good job of drafting. They invested a high first-round pick in Matt Khalil. He had a great first year, and then his play dropped off. Now he's injured and out for the season. They had Phil Lodeholt at right tackle, and he was good, but then he gets injured for about 2 years. So they bring in Andre Smith. So they let Lodeholt go. Andre Smith, the former Cincinnati Bengal, he gets hurt. And so now they have tackle problems even worse than Seattle has right now. So all those things together make it very difficult to get continuity on the offensive line and building an offensive line. And so you have so many teams that don't. I mean, you look in this division, the NFC West, I mean, the Rams have done just pretty much what the Seahawks have done with one exception. They have Roger Saffold at guard, a former tackle, but they pretty much just drafted young and hope those guys are going to make it. And right now, it's a question mark whether those guys are going to make it. They have a left tackle that's right now suspect. You don't know how good he is, and so there's breakdowns in that line. I honestly think in this league right now, you may only have about a half dozen really good offensive lines, and then you have a lot of average to below average offensive lines, and you have some real bad offensive lines. And so, the key is trying to win the battle at the line of scrimmage, and you try to do that with the best blocking you can, and it sometimes takes time to be able to get those lines to come together, where in effect that what you're looking at is that, like last year, it took half the season for the line to come together. This year in Seattle, it's taking more than half the year for the line to come together, and they're still trying to figure it out. But at some point, once you figure it out, then you can be okay, because then you have a pocket for the quarterback to be able to throw. You have the running game that's going to be able to keep you on the field and keep your defense on the field, and then everything starts to sync up. And once that starts to go, and that's the plan that Seattle has, then you start riding it into the playoffs and see how deep you can get into the playoffs and whether you can get back into the Super Bowl. But it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, and it's so much tougher now because with the spread offenses and with the air raid offenses, it's harder to make the gamble on an offensive line and know that you're going to be right. So it's just a wait and see time. And, of course, Seattle right now, they've got 2 rookies that are starting on the offensive line. They made a big move in the sense that they now have hit it with one move with Justin Britt doing well at center, and he's done a great job. They're hoping that Gary Gilliam continues to evolve at the right tackle position. Mark Lewinsky looks solid at guard, and Jermaine Ifedi looks like he's going to be there. And George Fant is the left tackle that has great athletic ability and is just trying to get it all down. What we'll do is come back and get together with Walter Jones, evaluate lines when he came into the league compared to lines now, and how tough it is and how well this team can build in Seattle and around the National Football League. It's Schooled with the Professor. Joining us right now is Walter Jones. And Walter, I wanted the subjects today wanted to try to go into just how different is it now to build an offensive line as opposed to when you played to where it is currently. How difficult is it? More difficult now to build a successful offensive line?
I think what's happening now is that when I came in the league, it was more of you pick a guy. I came in as a first rounder, so I was given the job. But when I came in, I think it was more, I would say, veteran guys. You came in, you was playing with veteran guys, the guys that kind of taught you how to play the game, how to be a student of the game. I think now, like you say, it's hard to put an offensive line together if you're not going to put in the work to put an offensive line together, and you're trying to see guys and scout guys to make sure that they can learn learn offensive line. It takes some time. I look at the offensive line that we have now. I think it's just they're a young group. So just trying to get those guys to to get together to be a good unit. It just takes time. I think if you put in the work to take time, you'll have a successful offensive line. I just think right now the pressure is so quick and want you to win right now. Just putting that time in is something that's different than when I came in the league.
Of course, I mean, I guess the one difference now is that when you played, the offense that you came out of in college was more similar to what was there in the pros, where now you have so many players that come out of spread offenses and air raid offenses. I mean, you have offensive linemen that go to school for 3 or 4 years and they never put their hand on the ground. And that makes a tough conversion, because at least if you know the offense in college, you have a pretty good chance of picking it up in the pros, but to try to do it in the pros without that kind of experience is difficult.
It's totally difficult. I think, you get to a point where you're being passive. I was always taught that if you was playing offensive lineman, you have to, the first thing coaches would want to see your stand. When I was playing in high school, when I even got to college, even if I saw a coach that knew I was an offensive lineman, the first thing that coach would tell me to do is get in my stance and see how I come off the ball. Not like you say now, these guys are in 2-point stand majority of the time, even when the situation calls for you to get in a 3-point stance and come off the football. These guys are playing in a 2-point stand, and a lot of guys some of these guys have learned how to play that. And as you get older, when I got in a 2-point stand, it made the game a lot easier. But still, again, when it comes down to the game being in a tough situation, you have to be able to put your hands on the ground and come off the ball and block these guys.
So far, the season's almost half over for the Seahawks. They played 7 games. This is week 9 or week 8, and we've now reached the stage where it's like, okay, now it's kind of evaluation time. Where would you judge where the Seahawks offensive line is today?
I watch the games and I try to just, I try to be a fan. As a fan, a lot of stuff is not happening, like they're accustomed to, the running back maybe is getting stopped in the backfield. But from a standpoint of just watching the offensive line, they seem like they're only a play away from being a pretty good offensive line. Like I said earlier, they're very young offensive line. So even, you got probably your best player is only in his 3rd year of playing offensive line or being in his offense, and everybody else is still learning, this offense. And you got I think about the story about George Grant, is that he's a left tackle that never ever played, started the game. So for him to be in that situation is amazing. To watch him last week, the things that, he was still a little unsettled, but still, again, to be able to go in there in that environment and play as well as he did. If you just break down the film and watch him, for him to be, this is his first ever start at playing offensive line. From reading everything, they didn't have no film on him. So this guy has definitely put some good film out there. So, even if the Seahawks don't go further with him, this guy definitely looked like he got the potential to do something great if he works at it and get stronger and work on his craft. But from this point right here, this team is, what they did in the 3rd quarter of the last game, you watch that 3rd quarter, they was doing some great stuff with the runs and stuff. So if the team is committed to saying this team, we believe in this offensive line, this offensive line might be pretty good once we get to the last couple of games of the year. But this offensive line, if they continue to keep working, should be pretty good.
Yeah, and that's the one thing, because I know that so many people bring up the idea. It's like, well, they only have like about $8 million tied up in this line for the entire line. And I shake my head at that, because it's like, okay, yeah, it's not like they have the fear of putting money into it. They've taken the position, right or wrong, that they're going to build it young. And you do that with draft choices. And so you don't pay that. You're not allowed to pay the draft choices until the 5th, 6th years that they get in the league.
Exactly. And I think everybody was kept saying about, making a trade. And I was saying, if you make that trade, you're still going to bring a guy in that don't know the offense. And you might not even get a chance to see that trade be worth anything until next year anyway. You're asking a guy to come in here to be, you would say, the savior, of the offensive line. Not saying if you're going to go young, that's the rock you're going to take, and you're going to take the bumps and bruises with those guys and let those guys figure out how to play the game. And I think you throw those guys in the fire. Those guys are learning. They're trusting each other each week. You watched the game last week. Justin Brett was constantly kept talking to the left tackle about, it's all about you going out there and working and stuff. So from that standpoint, they believe in those guys. That you hear Coach Carroll saying it all the time that we're going to be pretty good. So you have to believe that part of it, and you have to watch the game in a mindset of how he see the offensive line and see where they're going. And you can see there are spurts when when the game was on the line, those guys blocked pretty good for Russell to go down the field without any times out to make plays. And there was a couple of plays where he was pressured, but from a offensive line standpoint, you're thinking that you did enough to protect him to get the ball out of his hand.
How do you look at this line athletically as far as the type of athletes they have?
I think athletically they're pretty good. They're pretty slim guys. You look at offensive line, you always try to look and see are they fit guys? Can they run? Can they get to the next level? Those guys are pretty good at to get to the next level. I think with them being so young, I just think you get a chance to to be in the offense, to be in the off-season workout. I think they're just still young. They're still trying to learn techniques and learn how to come off the ball, and that just comes with reps and getting the opportunities. The last couple of games, they just haven't had the opportunities. If they was getting the opportunities to be on the field, to kind of feel, you're only playing 10 to 15 snaps going into halftime. There's just not enough snaps to get a feel for what's going on in the game. And they made a conscious effort to play, to come off the ball and run the ball in that third quarter, but still in the game, you always feel like you're behind the 8 ball. So you get that rush feeling. I think it's more of just taking a deep breath and saying, okay, we're going to stick with what's working right now. The run was working, but you still felt like you had to make that play down the field to kind of change the game around.
In fact, if you go back to last year, a lot of similarities in the sense that the line had a slow start for 6 games, then had a bye week, then started to come on. And now this line is going to be trying to do the same thing, the bye week a little bit earlier. But what did you see come together last year with the offensive line?
I think it was more of what happened, when Marshawn got hurt. And I think it was more of the situation where, I think Russell could, you wasn't, I think when Jimmy Graham got hurt, I think it kind of just, it took a lot of pressure off everybody. Now you can go out there and play football. And I think everybody was not worried about now if Jimmy Graham's going to get the football. He started just throwing the ball around, and everybody felt comfortable with the plays that was being called. Well, it wasn't an issue about, who if Jimmy Graham going to get any footballs thrown to him. It was more of Russell just going out there and making plays and making those guys feel confident in what they could do out there. And so those guys was definitely feeling good about going into the playoffs because they had figured it out and they was playing good football. And I think that's the way that they play. They scout, I guess, because it, like you said, happened last year where things was kind of like everybody was just slowly moving around and stuff. Then all of a sudden they figured out, and they might, like it's 8 games, it's going into week 8. So now maybe they're saying, okay, now we know our bread and butter. So now let's go out here, and these are the plays that we're going to run. These are the plays that we're going to be great at. So now these guys, it's almost like you're simplifying the offense for these guys now. Now you know the plays that you're going to rerun it. So these are what we're going to run, and these are what we're good at. So we're going to stick with these runs. So hopefully now that they're going into mid-season, now they got their plays, and now, okay, these are the plays now you got to try to stop. And we kind of run plays off all these formations, and now you got to try to stop us.
In fact, I'm kind of wondering about this too. Marshawn Lynch being such a unique back, what did he do for the offensive line? Did he make it better, or what? How do you block for a Marshawn Lynch?
I think blocking for Marshawn Lynch, I think all you got to do is get your hands on the guys. I think he made their job a lot easier. Not saying they wasn't doing their job, but for a guy like Marshawn, I think, never block for him, but the way that he played the game, I think he was more telling those guys, hey, if you get a hand on those guys or you stay in front of those guys, that makes my job easy. So those guys definitely played the game the way that they felt that Marshawn was behind him, that, hey, if I stay on my guy, Marshawn can make a play. Or if I continue, even if he get in the hole, he can definitely keep his feet churning and make positive plays. He always, like you say, with a running back, he always was leaning forward, and he always was looking for the contact. So that made those guys want to go out there and block for him. And, sometimes you can look at plays where nobody blocking, and he still made positive plays. So for that standpoint, you felt good going out there having this guy in the backfield that you know that this guy is always going to be leaning forward and trying to get in the end zone.
Well, and that's the thing, too. I mean, fans and critics are always trying to click their fingers and say, okay, that's the thing. Get Marshawn Lynch back. But clearly, the way he ran had its toll, and you knew at some point he was going to get out of the game, and now you can't go back to that. I know he visited the locker room this week, but he visited as an ex-player because at some point you just run out of time on the field.
Definitely, and I think like as players, you look at that and say, man, you look at those hits. Sometimes when I used to watch him play and stuff, I used to sometimes you're thinking like, okay, he's going to get out of bounds, he's going to get down. You just like you say, that's going to take a toll on your body. It's just like those impacts going to take a toll on your body. And no matter how tough a person is, you get to a point where you're saying, well, if your mind is want to do it, but your body won't let you do it anymore. So that's the toll that it takes on your body, and you try your best, and sometimes that takes a toll on the offense too, because you're trying to find that guy that can play. I can remember the year that Hutch left, we was always trying to, we would put a guy in there and say, well, he don't play like Hutch. So now that guy was rotate guards all the time, because now we try to compare everybody to that guy. And that's a hard thing it takes a while for you to get to that point where you're trying not to compare the next guy to this guy. You have to kind of fill out that guy and say, okay, this is the way this guy's going to play the game of football, and we like the way he played the game of football, and we're going to leave him in there and let him learn how to play the game of football. So I think a lot of times that affects the team, and they just trying to figure out, what their guys can do and how they play the game.
Well, the big thing is you seem very positive the way this thing is going to go, and I think that's great for everybody to hear. Hey, Walter, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks a lot.
Good news, everyone! It's time
to ask the professor.
I know the truth.
Welcome back to Schooled with the Professor. Remember, each week you get a chance to ask me any question you have relating to the podcast. Just get on Twitter and use the hashtag ClaytonSchooled. This week, I talked to Hall of Famer Walter Jones about the offensive lines in the National Football League. Our question comes from Jennifer in Oswego, who asks, if a team is starting out with the worst offensive line in the NFL, realistically, what's the fastest turnaround a team could make through the draft and free agency? Good question. I'd say probably 2 to 3 years. Of course, most coaches don't get 2 to 3 years to be able to do anything, Jennifer, because it's such a quick league as far as not firing coaches, and there's impatience and all that stuff. And I think what you have to do is first judge what the talent level can be while the offensive line is playing poor, and what the optimism can be. Because if the talent's not going to be there, then it's not going to get fixed. And so what you have to try to do is try to at least build through a line. And go to the New York Giants, for example. The Giants had a situation where they waited too long to build the offensive line and doing it. And I have this one stat that I always try to keep track of. I call it the theory of 150. And what the theory of 150 is if you have 5 starting offensive linemen and their total age exceeds the number 150 or is close to it, you now have a 3-year rebuilding process, because now basically you have 4 or 5 guys that are near 30 years old with a window about 1 or 2 years of being able to play at a good level, and then you have to replace 5. And replacing 5, that could take you 3 years, because you have to think about, okay, how do you do it? Do you do it through the draft and free agency? And a lot of times you move in free agency, and that move doesn't succeed. Take a look at the Arizona Cardinals, for example, who last year did a great job with the offensive line. Remember what they did? They had signed Jarrett Valdir. They had a high draft choice in Jonathan Cooper. They had to get Lynn Senline out of pretty much retirement to get there, but they had some good spots. They took Mike Iupati in free agency. And so they go through the season, they win the NFC West, and they look pretty good. But then the problem is they built through free agency. And so now You see Mike Iupati in year 2 with the team. He's struggling with his pass blocking because he never really was a great pass blocker. Gerald Verdier, who was very good, almost a Pro Bowl alternate last year, has a bad start to his season, or not a shaky start to the season. He blows out a tricep. They traded away Jonathan Cooper, who they drafted high. They took a young center, A.Q. Shipley, and he struggled, and the right side of the line's a mess. And so all of a sudden, you can try to maybe speed up the process in free agency, but it doesn't necessarily work. I mean, the best way to do it is mixing draft choices, much like the Seahawks are trying to do, but it's still not known yet if this line is particularly going to work out. I mean, they put a second-round pick in Justin Britt. Now he's a right tackle, he was a guard, he's a center, but now he looks like a very good center. All right, Mark Lewinsky, he was a fourth-round pick, and he looks pretty good at the guard spot. Fetty's a number 1. That looks good. Now they've got 2 undrafted guys at tackle. We'll see how that holds up with Gary Gilliam and also George Fant. But remember, they did take Reese Odiombo, who was a third-round pick and has the potential to be a right or a left tackle. So they've put the investments in there. Now it's a matter of trying to get those guys to develop to a point where they can play and play very well. And so far, that has not meshed together yet. The hope there is at some point very soon it will. And if not, I mean, then the team's going to struggle to make the playoffs or be in the playoffs. I mean, they still got a great shot. And I do think this line will come together because I think the athletic talent is there to be able to do it. And you can see there might have been some opportunities to make some trades, but the team elected not to do it. They believe in these guys. And last year, when you looked at how bad the line was to start the season, there wasn't a great belief, but they had the belief. The team did. Tom Cable did. Pete Carroll did. Certainly John Snyder did. And so they were able to put it all together and do well and finish strong at the end of the regular season. Same thing can happen this year. But literally, it's going to take you, if you're starting from scratch, 2 to 3 years to build up the quality. Because first, you have to find 5 starters. I mean, you really look at drafts. It's hard enough if you draft 8 or 9 guys to find 3 legitimate starters that are going to be there. And so now if you're taking 5 starters out of 3 drafts and say you put that together and that gives you, say, the bottom line is, okay, can you get 9 starters out of the first 3 years of the draft and 5 of them are offensive linemen? Next thing you know, you're either weak at the receiver position, weak on defense because now there's such a commitment there. But that's why accumulating as many draft choices as you can is a big aid, and it's also a big aid to have the success of guys coming in. So it just takes time to build offensive lines, and that's just the reality of the National Football League. But you have to have the commitment to do it, because if you can't win the line of scrimmage battle, and you need to do that on offense, you're not going to be a winner in the National Football League. That's it for this week's edition of Schooled. Thanks for listening. Class dismissed.